Most people today don't actually lack information. They lack clarity. You turn on the news and you're instantly hit with this barrage of headlines about the Middle East, proxy wars, diplomatic breakdowns, the whole shebang. But to truly understand what's going on, we have to cut right through that modern noise and focus on the signal. We have to look at the verifiable, evidence-based history that actually drives this region. So in today's explainer, we're going to explore a massive 1,400-year ethnographic signal, the structural relationship between Arab and Persian civilizations. Look, this isn't about telling you what to think. It's about giving you the context to think clearly. So let's dive right in.
Here's our roadmap for the briefing today. 1. Two distinct regional identities. 2. The Great Historical Convergence. 3. Eras of conflict and synthesis. 4. The discovery of oil. And 5. The geopolitical ramifications.
All right, part 1, two distinct regional identities. To really understand the Middle East, we have to establish a core foundational baseline. Arabs and Persians are entirely distinct peoples. Geographic proximity completely masks this reality for a lot of people, but we are talking about two completely separate civilizations here. The Persians have an Indo-European lineage, which contrasts super sharply with the Semitic lineage of the Arabs, whose roots are deep in the harsh deserts of the Arabian Peninsula. Now, why does this matter? Well, because ethnicity and language fundamentally shape how you view the world. These two groups didn't just casually grow up next to each other. They developed entirely different civilizational structures over millennia before they ever really crossed paths. To really grasp the Persian identity, just look at the name of their homeland. The word Iran literally translates to land of the Aryans. And this is not some modern political invention. It's a term the Persian people have used internally for millennia to describe themselves and their ancient heritage. Surprisingly, though, it wasn't until 1935, under Reza Shah, that the nation officially requested the international community to start using Iran instead of Persia. This wasn't just a rebrand, it was a deliberate anchor to their deep, enduring historical identity. Historical anthropologists love to point out this fundamental structural divergence in how these two identities actually operated in practice. Historically, the Persians were these grand empire builders. Over centuries, they flourished by basically assimilating influences from all the lands around them. Greece, Egypt, India, and they reshaped all of that into a unified, massive, imperial structure without losing their core identity. By contrast, Arab history is deeply, deeply rooted in nomadic, Bedouin tribal structures where loyalty was intensely local and familial. You can even see this schism in their languages. Persian or Farsi is an Indo-European language, while Arabic is Semitic. It's literally a completely different linguistic family tree. Which brings us to part 2, the Great Historical Convergence. So, for centuries, these two peoples mostly went their separate ways. But what happens when these two completely distinct civilizations inevitably collide? Well, in the 7th century, we get this explosive convergence that entangles them forever. Arab Islamic armies, newly united under a shared faith, crossed over into Persian territory. But here's the catch, and historical records back this up. They didn't encounter the Sasanian Empire at its peak. The Persian superpower was already severely weakened by internal decay, absolutely grueling wars with the Byzantine Empire, and this devastating outbreak known as the Plague of Sheroe. That plague had decimated the population and left the empire essentially leaderless. Let's walk through the verifiable timeline of this collapse, because it happened fast. In 633 AD, Arab armies first enter Persian territory. Just 3 years later, in 636 AD, the decisive Battle of Al-Qadisiyah completely shatters the Sasanian military resistance. And finally, by 651 AD, with the death of the last Sasanian king, Yazdegerd III, the ancient Persian Empire officially falls. For the very first time in their long history, the Persians found themselves under Arab rule. Make no mistake, this was an absolute cataclysmic shift in the global power structure. Let's move to part 3, eras of conflict and synthesis. Now, this new reality basically swung like a massive pendulum between violent conflict and deep cultural synthesis. The immediate aftermath? It was brutal. The Umayyad Caliphate ruled from Damascus with a hardcore Arab supremacist ideology. They effectively treated non-Arabs as second-class citizens and violently suppressed the Persian language. The scholar al-Biruni actually recorded systematic attempts by Arab armies to literally eliminate anyone who could speak or write regional Persian languages, essentially trying to erase the culture entirely. But, as you might guess, that kind of resentment fuels revolution. When the Abbasids took over and moved the capital to Baghdad, the pendulum swings back. We see this era of unprecedented cooperative effort. Persian scholars, administrators, and viziers practically co-ran the Islamic Empire. They synthesized their ancient culture with the new religion, helping to spark a wildly prosperous Islamic golden age. But look, those underlying ethnic tensions, they never vanished. They simply evolved. Fast forward a bit to 1501 AD, and we hit another monumental turning point. The Safavid dynasty officially institutionalizes Shia Islam as the state religion of Iran. This created a permanent, rock-hard structural and religious boundary against the Sunni Arab world. For the next 2 centuries, the Shia Safavids and the Sunni Ottoman Empire fought devastating wars along an staggeringly long 1,500-mile frontier. And that exact same historical fault line, it ruptured again in 1979 with the Iranian Revolution, which actively sought to export its specific revolutionary ideology across the Islamic world, deeply, deeply antagonizing its Arab neighbors. All right, part 4, the discovery of oil. If history was the only factor here, this region would be complex enough for sure. But a huge 20th century catalyst completely altered the stakes. 1908. You're definitely going to want to mentally bookmark that year. That is when oil was first discovered in the Middle East, specifically at Majd-e-Sulayman in Persia. Suddenly, overnight, this ancient, deeply complex landscape of tribal loyalties and imperial memories was sitting squarely on top of the most valuable resource on the planet, black gold. The ramifications of this discovery were totally overwhelming. In the short term, it sparked a massive scramble from British and Russian colonial powers who desperately wanted to dominate the region's energy. This sudden influx of massive wealth also allowed for the rapid funding of entirely new, modern state apparatuses. But the long-term ramifications, those were even more profound. It created what development economists call a resource curse. So we're talking immense wealth disparities and authoritarian entrenchment. Crucially, though, it provided the vast financial fuel required to arm ancient rivalries with modern oil-funded militaries, setting the perfect stage for the proxy struggles we see across the entire Middle East today. And finally, part 5, the geopolitical ramifications. So how does a 1,400-year history decode the news you see on your phone today? We have to separate the historical signal from the modern noise. What we usually interpret simply as modern territorial struggles or proxy wars over energy security are actually modern echoes of a massive historical fault line. The historian Rashid Khalidi talks about a 100 years war framework for modern territorial disputes. But if you zoom out, the fundamental structural friction between the Persian and Arab identities remains the true driving force beneath it all. Now, we aren't taking sides here. We are simply recognizing the incredibly deep foundation that these modern maneuvers are built upon. So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative question to chew on. As we watch new diplomatic normalizations being brokered today, what is ultimately going to dictate the future of the Middle East? Can modern economic interests and energy security ever truly override a millennium of structural, historical distrust? That right there is the signal hidden beneath the noise. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep exploring the data yourself, and I'll see you next time as we continue to break down the complex world around us.